Tonight on First at 9, this Sunday the 5th of May 2024. Steady progress. Asian Development Bank commends Sri Lanka's economic progress and reiterates unwavering support during meeting with Sri Lanka's Finance State Minister. Reforms agenda. Sri Lanka must continue fiscal and economic reforms to complete the signing of Memoranda of Understanding with official creditor nations, insists Japan's Deputy Spokesperson of Foreign Affairs as the visiting Japanese Foreign Affairs Minister holds talks with Sri Lankan leaders during day 2 of her visit. Tourist arrivals. Sri Lanka welcomes over 140 tourists in April, a surge of over 40% year-on-year. Highest arrivals registered from India and Russia. Tourism investments. Sri Lanka to call ROIs to bring investors to convert Port of Galle to a tourist port.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9 with Ndivadi Amuata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very warm welcome. You're joining us this Sunday on First at 9 with the very latest in both local news and international affairs. We take you straight to your top stories tonight. President of the Asian Development Bank, Masatsugu Asakawa, reiterates unwavering and steadfast commitment towards Sri Lanka's development agenda. The ADB chief has also commended efforts taken so far to achieve progress on the economic front. Issuing during a meeting with the ADB President on the sidelines of the annual meeting of the Asian Development Bank, State Minister for Finance Shahan Semasinghe affirmed Sri Lanka's plans to seek assistance from the ADB for the implementation of transformative initiatives such as the Climate Prosperity Plan.
State Minister of Finance Shahan Semasinghe met with the President of the Asian Development Bank Masatsugu Asakawa on the sidelines of the 57th annual meeting of the Asian Development Bank in Georgia today. The State Minister said that the ADB President commended President Ranil Wickremesinghe and the government on the steady progress made towards achieving economic recovery as well as the action plan published on the governance diagnostic report. Semasinghe further said discussions covered reforms that have been implemented to enhance economic stability, foster growth and strengthen governance. Discussions between the Sri Lankan State Minister and the ADB President also focused on the progress of the debt restructuring progress. State Minister Semasinghe disclosed plans to reach out to the Asian Development Bank to seek support for the implementation of transformative initiatives such as Sri Lanka's Climate Prosperity Plan. President of the Asian Development Bank Masatsugu Asakawa reiterated ADB's unwavering steadfast commitment towards supporting Sri Lanka.
ජීවිතේ හැම තැනකදීම ස්මාර්ට් වෙන්න පොලිය විතරක් ගෙවාගෙන යන්න CDB Smart Draft.
State Minister for Finance Shahan Semasinghe meanwhile observes that the Asian Development Bank has a responsibility to provide adequate and updated knowledge and expertise to its member states to help face global development challenges and ensure sustainable development in an inclusive and balanced environment. He said this while joining the Governor's business session of the 57th ADB annual meetings, which concludes in Georgia today. During the sessions, Minister Semasinghe also assured Sri Lanka's fullest cooperation in achieving the Asian Development Bank's vision, but highlighted that member nations expect the ADB to continue to play a catalytic role as a financing partner.
Joining the Governor's business session of the Asian Development Bank's annual general meeting today, State Minister for Finance Shahan Semasinghe called out for new strategies jointly formulated by the ADB member nations to tackle future issues and risks posed by challenges such as inequality, poverty and climate devastation. He also said attention must be drawn to uncertainties in the region due to conflict and volatile commodity prices. Highlighting the continuous challenges faced by the Asia and Pacific region, he said countries in the region are facing difficulties in rebounding from constant shocks. The State Minister said reducing the impact of climate change on the poor and vulnerable in the Asia-Pacific region, a region that contributes comparatively little to global carbon emissions, should be a main focus of the ADB's development path. He also said the ADB, as a regional development bank, has a major role to play in preparing its members to face the challenges of global development by providing adequate and updated knowledge and expertise to confront global issues and ensure sustainable development. Many of the developing member countries find difficulties in moving ahead parallel to global trends in the backdrop of rapidly accelerating technological changes. He said country-focused approaches to match the global development agenda have to be promoted through the sovereign and non-sovereign operations of the ADB. Paying gratitude to the Asian region's finance lender for supporting the recovery process in Sri Lanka, he said the assistance provided by ADB in several reform areas is instrumental in the country's stabilization measures and setting the stage for economic recovery and growth. He also assured the fullest cooperation of Sri Lanka to achieve ADB's vision and added that Sri Lanka expects ADB to continue to play its catalytic role as a financing partner and knowledge partner for the region.
Japan stresses that Sri Lanka must continue fiscal and economic reforms for the signing of Memoranda of Understanding with member states of the Official Creditors Committee in relation to Sri Lanka's external debt of the country. During an at Hyde Park exclusive, for which I sat down with the deputy spokesperson for the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mariko Kaneko, who is part of the visiting Japanese delegation accompanying Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa to Sri Lanka, she commented on the stalled Japanese-funded projects in the island. It is expected that Japanese-funded development projects will resume once the signing of the MOUs with bilateral creditors is complete. Speaking further, Mariko Kaneko said discussions with Sri Lankan leaders were fruitful, reconfirming the trust and friendship between the two nations. The Japanese foreign minister who spoke earlier to the media mentioned about the agreements in principle reached with the official creditors. How will this take shape going forward, and is there an indication of when we will see these being transformed into Memoranda of Understanding?
The Official Creditors Committee, which Japan is co-chairing, has agreed in principle with Sri Lanka government, and now we are in a process of coming into the wordings of Memorandum of Understanding. And Sri Lanka government also needs to make efforts in doing that, and our Minister Kamikawa extended expectation for the early signing of the Memorandum of Understanding.
So you mentioned that Sri Lanka too has to play a role. What is expected of Sri Lanka here?
I believe that Sri Lanka's government now making efforts to do the fiscal reforms and economic reforms in many areas, and Japan fully supports that effort. In order to come to sign the memorandum of agreement, those efforts need to be advanced more, and eventually the Official Creditors Committee will be able to sign the understandings with the government, your government.
Especially with certain important projects being halted, has there been any discussion centering the progress or resumption of these projects?
Minister Kamikawa at the press conference stated that Japan will swiftly resume these existing projects once the Memorandum of Understanding is signed and the Sri Lankan government will agree to have a bilateral agreements on it. So we stand by Sri Lanka to support the development of Sri Lanka. The meetings with the foreign minister and the courtesy call on the president and the prime minister have been very fruitful, and I think we were able to confirm our strong relationship based on trust and friendship, and we share lots in common. As island nations, Japan is committed to promote stability and development of Sri Lanka and also in this region. This is because it is very important for Japan too. The stability and the economic development of Sri Lanka is very important for Japan.
The passenger ferry service between Nagapattinam in India and Kankasanture in northern Sri Lanka is expected to resume on the 13th of May. India today notified its decision to bear the cost towards relevant charges and operating costs at Nagapattinam port in Tamil Nadu to the tune of over 25 million Sri Lankan rupees per month for a period of 1 year. The Indian High Commission in Colombo said in a statement that the decision was taken to make the service affordable and attractive for passengers. The ferry service will be operated by a private operator, InSri Ferry Services, selected by the Shipping Corporation of India. The Sri Lankan government earlier this year reduced the deviation tax currently charged to passengers leaving Sri Lanka on passenger vessels and ships. The Indian government also expects extended grant assistance of $63.35 million to Sri Lanka earlier for the rehabilitation of Kankasantore harbour, which was earlier envisaged to be undertaken under a line of credit. Additionally, the Indian High Commission in Colombo said that in the future, connectivity with Sri Lanka will be further enhanced through electricity grid interconnection on two-way multi-purpose pipeline and setting up a land connectivity economic corridor. Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva has instructed officials to call for requests of interest for investors interested in contributing to the development of the Port of Galle as a tourist port. The port is expected to be initiated with funding of $200 million provided by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. Meanwhile, the Department of Wildlife is expected to submit within a span of a week an environmental impact assessment report that can resolve all environmental issues associated with the Galle Leisure Port Development Project.
Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva instructed officials of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority to call for requests of interest from both local and foreign investors interested in contributing to the development project of the Port of Galle. The Port of Galle is expected to be developed into a tourist port. Plans entail the construction of two backwaters measuring 850 meters and 150 meters respectively. Additionally, the harbour basin is expected to be dredged to a depth of 12.05 meters, while a new passenger terminal is also set to be built. A special meeting to discuss environmental and wildlife concerns associated with the constructions of the project was convened by the Minister of Port, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva. The meeting was attended by Minister of Wildlife and Forest Resources Conservation Pavitra Waniarachi as well as Minister of Health Dr. Ramesh Patirana. During the meeting, it was proposed that the Department of Wildlife should submit an environmental impact assessment report within a week's time. The report is expected to resolve all environmental issues to facilitate the development program at the Port of Galle. According to the Ministry of Ports, a total of $200 million will be allocated by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority for the development project.
The GCE Ordinary Level Examination for year 2023 academic year is scheduled to commence tomorrow. According to the Department of Examinations, 452,979 candidates are expected to sit for the examination tomorrow. Meanwhile, Commissioner General of Examinations issuing guidelines for the candidates highlighted that any student who fails to follow will be suspended from sitting for any exams for the next 5 years.
The 2023 GCE Ordinary Level Examination will commence tomorrow at 3,527 examination centres across the island. A total of 452,979 candidates are eligible to sit for this year's examination, out of which 387,648 are school candidates. 65,331 candidates have applied for this year's Ordinary Level Examination as private candidates. Examination centres at schools have already been prepared to host the exam starting tomorrow. The exam is scheduled to conclude on the 15th of May.
The candidates cannot take their mobile phones inside the examination hall. Similarly, Bluetooth, mini cameras and other electronic devices are also strictly prohibited. Candidates are permitted to use wristwatches, however, no smartwatches can be used. However, if any candidate uses any electronic devices during the exam, they will be suspended from facing any exam for 5 years.
Meanwhile, the re-scrutinized results of the 2022-2023 Ordinary Level Examination were released midnight yesterday. Accordingly, the re-scrutinized results can be viewed via the exam department's official websites.
Why do candidates apply for re-scrutiny of results? If they are not content with the obtained results, they can sit for the same exam again after applying for re-scrutiny of results. The re-scrutinized results were released last night and the exam is scheduled to commence tomorrow. There's only 1 day remaining. Therefore, such candidates are unable to sit for the exam tomorrow. This is totally unfair. We urge the Minister of Education to look into this matter immediately.
Welcome back to the news. We take you to business affairs. According to data released by the Tourism Development Authority, Sri Lanka has welcomed some 148,000 tourists during April, registering a growth of over 40,000 or 40% compared to arrivals in the same month of last year. With that, the total number of tourists for the year so far has increased to 784,651. India continues to be the #1 market for tourists to Sri Lanka, while Russia followed in second place.
Sri Lanka's tourism industry has been taking a turn for the better since the beginning of 2024, and the island nation has welcomed more than 784,651 tourists over the first 4 months of the year. In April alone, Sri Lanka received a total of 148,867 tourists. This is a surge of 41% year-on-year. In April last year, Sri Lanka received 105,498 tourists. According to statistics issued by the Tourism Development Authority, the highest number of tourist arrivals were recorded during the first and second weeks of April, amounting to a total of 76,268 arrivals. The highest number of tourists in April were from India, with a total of 27,304. Coming in second was Russia with a total of 15,103 arrivals. A significant number of tourists were also recorded from Germany, the United Kingdom, China and France.
Also in news on business, Sri Lanka's average coconut prices fell to 62,948 per 1,000 nuts at an auction on the 2nd of May from 63,231 a year earlier. Data from the Coconut Development Authority shows that the highest price was 73,000 rupees for 10,000 nuts, up from 72,200 rupees a week ago. The lowest was down to 52,800 from 60,000. Average coconut prices at the auction were down 17% from the last auction in December. A total of 873,957 coconuts were offered at the auction and only 559,639 nuts were sold. Wholesale prices were 95 to 110 rupees for large nuts and 85 to 90 rupees per small in the week to April 17th. Here's a look at your corporate affairs in brief.
In its annual report for the preceding year, People's Insurance plc highlighted the company's objective to leverage opportunities in the non-motor segment. Chief Executive Officer of People's Insurance, Jeevani Kariyavasam, mentioned that this move acknowledges the importance of innovative approaches of the company and also contributes to the country's economic transition. In the 2023 annual report, the CEO of People's Insurance plc highlighted the commitment of the company in reinforcing their position in the motor segment by focusing on service differentiation and extensive digital integration aimed at enhancing customer convenience. Meanwhile, in its annual report for 2023, Chairman of Merchant Bank of Sri Lanka and Finance plc, Andra Pereira, revealed plans to allocate resources to re-establish MBSL in investment banking, aiming to boost fee-based income. The company chairman also remained positive to enhance efficiency and productivity through technology investments. In other similar corporate news, Kahawatha Plantations plc unveiled that the company has commenced a plan to plant 185 hectares of tea in 2 regions over the next 5 years, with work already in place for the initial 35 hectares. Through such initiatives, the company aims to maximize capacity utilization and improved work practices to boost productivity and reduce production costs.
Leader of the Samagi Janabalawega, Sajid Premadasa, states that he will establish an internationally recognized, strong educational program under a SJB-led government. Meanwhile, independent parliamentarian Dayasiri Jayasekara stated that the SLPP has no alternative than to join forces with President Ranil Wickremesinghe during the upcoming presidential election.
මිරිංගුවක් පස්සේ ගිහිල්ලා අද රටම බංකොලොත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. 2019 ගත්ත තීන්දුව තුල අත්පත් වෙලා තිබෙන ඉරණම ගැන ආයේ කියන්න දෙයක් නැහැනේ. මම ඒක විග්‍රහ කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. අඩුම ගානේ 2024 අපි පටන් ගමු සුහුරු රටක් වෙන එක. මේ 76 වසර තුල වෙන කිසිම නායකයෙක් ලබා නොදුන්නු වැඩපිළිවෙලක් මේ රටේ 41 ලක්ෂ දූ දරුවන්ට තාරුණ්‍යයටත් මම ලබා දෙනවා. ජාත්‍යන්තර තලයේ විශිෂ්ට පිළිගැනීමක් තිබෙන අතිශය ශක්තිමත් අධ්‍යාපන වැඩපිළිවෙලක් මම මේ රටේ දුවා දරුවන් 41 ලක්ෂයටත් තාරුණ්‍යයටත් ලබා දෙනවයි කියන එක මම මේ අවස්ථාවේ ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ අභියෝගයක් බාරගත්ත කවුරුත් බාරගත්ත නැති වෙලාකට අපිට කතා නෙමෙයි ඕනෙවන්නේ ක්‍රියාව. අපි ක්‍රියාවෙන් ඔප්පු කරලා තියෙනවා වැටිච්ච රට කොහොමද ඉදිරියට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ.
දැන් අතර වෙච්ච සම්වර්ධනේ ආයෙ පටන් ගන්න. මේ අභියෝගේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා බාරගත්ත තනි පුද්ගලයා විදියට අපිට කිව්වා සහයෝගය ලබා දෙන්න කියලා. දැන් අපි ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා. හැබැයි අනිත් කට්ටිය ඉන්න කට්ටියක් ඒක විවේචනය කර. ඒ නිසා අපි තීන්දුව කර ගන්න ඕන රට දැන් මේ යන ගමන ඉස්සරහට ගිහිල්ලා හොඳ තත්යකට ගේනවද නැත්නම් ආපස්සට වට්ටනවද කියලා.
Now, Sri Lanka Army has granted amnesty to 9,784 army deserters as part of the ongoing general amnesty period. With that, here's a look at more news across the island in brief.
The Sri Lanka Army announced that nearly 10,000 army personnel who were absent from duty without obtaining leave were temporarily discharged from their regimental centres during the ongoing general amnesty period. As of the end of the first 2 weeks of the amnesty period, between the 20th of April and the 4th of May, a total of 9,735 army personnel who were absent without leave since December last year and earlier were temporarily discharged. Meanwhile, a 38-year-old businessman residing in Graceland Estate in Horana was severely injured following a shooting incident this morning. Two unidentified gunmen who arrived on a motorcycle opened fire at the businessman travelling in his vehicle. Police revealed that the injured person is currently receiving treatment at the Colombo National Hospital. The suspects of the incident were later apprehended by the police while attempting to flee to Dubai. In other local news, a 17-year-old was stabbed to death with a sharp weapon following an argument during an outdoor musical show earlier this morning. According to police, the person who allegedly carried out the attack was apprehended by Panudra North Police. Further investigations into the incident were carried out by the Panudra North Crimes Unit.
Well, that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9 on Derana 24. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. I'm Indivari Amuatha. Good night.